hardware store. If you purchase a pair of kites separately, they're going to run you just under $900, which makes them notably more expensive than other comparably sized bookshelf speakers like Polk Audio's R200. Rega doesn't give a lot of info regarding the kite's performance, so I wasn't really sure what to expect upon hitting play. And while I am not a spec-obsessed audiophile, knowing a speaker's proposed frequency response can help me to determine just how judgmental I can or should be regarding a speaker's performance. Thankfully, it doesn't take much to get up and running with the System 1, and with everything connected and set up, I put a record on, lowered the needle, sat back, and was completely underwhelmed. Maybe I had set my expectations too high, given all the time and effort Christy went through to secure this review, but we both turned and looked at one another and just shrugged. I know that I'm likely in the minority here. I know many have been pretty pleased with the performance of this system, but at over $2,000 for the whole setup, I was incredibly disappointed. The sound of the system overall was lean, more detail focused thanks to an almost complete lack of weight and or bass, and a bit narrow in its scope. Tonally, the setup lacked warmth or an organic quality on a whole, which was not in keeping with my prior experiences with Rega. So while the system sounded nice when playing back simple singer-songwriter fare like John Mayer, the second, and I mean the second, I fed it something more complex or featuring frequencies below the mid-range, for example, Moby's Play B-sides, the whole system just fell flat. Now normally, this is where I would say just connect a sub or two in order to bring back some of the missing bass. Only the I.O. lacks preamp or subwoofer outs, which is kind of surprising given that the I.O. retails for over $700 on its own. It was at this point that I sincerely thought about packing up the entire system and just sending it back. But never one to give up that easily, I decided to ditch what seemed like the weak link, and I pulled the Kite speakers out of the system and grabbed our Revel M16 bookshelf speakers and later the Q Acoustic Concept 50 towers. Swapping out the speakers got us to reverse course and give the remaining Rega pieces a second look. The tone of the Rega gear changed considerably using other speakers. I'm not suggesting that it literally changed, but the sound we were responding to earlier rested almost entirely on the Rega speakers and not the electronics or the P1 turntable itself. While I would still classify the I.O. and P1 as more neutral to maybe even cool in tone, we were now able to enjoy a measure of bass which grounded everything and made the Rega gear sound a lot less forward and thin. And when listening to Apple Music and Tidal through the Bluesound node, I was pleasantly surprised by the I.O.'s taut and detailed bass, nuanced mid-range, and pristine treble response. The sound was way more well-balanced with terrific detail and a greater sense of space, though admittedly the latter is going to be largely loudspeaker dependent. Dynamically, for only having 30 watts at its disposal, the I.O. does not come across as underpowered. If anything, it possesses a surprising amount of confidence at higher volumes. When listening in excess of 90 dB, the I.O., at least when paired with the Q Acoustics, proved to be pretty damn unflappable. Switching back to records, some of the I.O.'s detail retrieval and sharper focus did soften. Sound was a little bit more laid back or warm or richer in tone due to the treble simply being less extended and the bass losing some of its grip, which I didn't mind. If anything, the sound was in line with what I believe a lot of people trying vinyl for the very first time will likely be expecting. As a pairing, the I.O. and P1 make a lot of sense, and when connected to speakers with more full range capability, I think listeners are going to be pretty happy with the results. This combo manages to sound engaging at both low and high volumes and isn't one that is going to
אני חושב שאני האדם היחיד בחדר הזה שחווה חוויית התביעה. שהייתי חייל בסרט מטכ"ל, עשינו פשיטה בתעלת סואץ. תביעה ביתית, לא ביתית.